And today we're going to be touching on listing and searching for land. I know this is kind of like an unusual topic, but there are clients out there that do want to buy land only and maybe build a house on it, or just buy land for investment purposes. I personally sell a lot of land, so I'm pretty familiar with this topic. And what I would like to focus is just the searching of land and also listing land, and also some how-tos on those topics and some tips that I would highly recommend you guys follow as well. So let's go ahead and go on to the agenda. So listing and searching for land lots, using the correct contracts, selling land and submitting offers to land are not the usual contracts that you're used to seeing. Um, you're accustomed to the 1-to-4 contract, but in this case, we're going to use a different form for undeveloped land, and then some tips. So searching for land and lots, you guys are probably becoming familiar with Matrix MLS, where you have the home screen, and you probably tend to go to either single family if we're looking at houses to sell, or rental, like houses for lease. But lots is located in its own category. And again, and whoever's following me can follow me too, with on your computer. But you click on search and then look for lots and then quick lots. And once you get there, then you can start putting a criteria. So let's go ahead and do that. Quick lots, and it immediately gives you into the criteria section of Matrix. So what we're going to do is just a quick little demo. We have a client that wants to buy, or wants to see lots to purchase in the Acres Homes area. The zip code that he's focusing on is 77088, and he wants to build a future home there. And the criteria that he's given me is he wants it to be square feet or 5,000 square feet or higher. He wants the frontage to be 50 feet, and then the sides to be about 100 feet. And then the price range that he's looking for is anywhere from 25,000 to 35,000. So that's going to be our criteria. So we're going to go ahead and do that and search for those properties. Yeah, when you're searching for land, it's not like the similar one where you're looking for houses where particular bedrooms and you want a 2-car garage, and maybe you want a swimming pool. Land is a little bit much easier to search for. So this is the screen for the criteria for the lot. As you can tell, there's less fields to search by. And just make sure on the status you select active. You don't want to send your clients a list of other houses, of properties that that are on contract. So just make sure that you just have active. So it wants the price range 25 to 35,000. Again, you don't have to put the 000 because that's already invoked in this little checkbox. So just put 25 to 35, and that's a range. Okay. And they want the lot size to be higher than 5,000 square feet. So you can just do 5,000 plus. And really, you don't have to do much over here other than they want a zip code of 77088. And once we do that, then we click on results. And then that'll give us that specific results for that criteria that the client wants you to send them a report or send them an email on these houses, on these properties. As you can see, they're the price range that he was asking about. The lot size is, I asked for 5,000 or higher, so you'll see that. Another thing that you're going to notice with lots, and you don't have to be too concerned about, usually when you're looking at houses, the days on the market, you'll see DOM, days on the market. Lots take a long time to sell. So don't think about it as, oh, we can probably offer less because they haven't sold it. With lots, they take up to a year to sell, sometimes 2 years to sell. So you can't really focus on DOMs where, oh, let's lowball the offer. That's not going to work because lots tend to take a long time to sell to begin with. Maybe if it's 365 days, close to that, maybe you can negotiate, but the 120s and 195s, not. Maybe this one right here that says 237, you might be able to negotiate, but the other one's probably not going to happen. But anyway, here's the lots. So we able to produce that report. And um, another thing that we're not sure about is the criteria said 50 feet and the frontage. Well, it's really difficult to see that on here. Now you can click and insert a column where you type in a column for inserting um, the dimensions, but not every realtor, not every listing agent will put in dimensions. So sometimes it doesn't work very well. But let's just say you wanted to see the lot front dimensions. You can click on that and then apply it. And then that will insert the column for that, for all the results. And then that way you can determine if it matches that criteria that he wants, which is above 50. Normally that's the standard. I sell a lot of land, and in my experience, I noticed that 50 is kind of the minimum, um, because then you can build a house where it's, you can see the entire front of the house, versus if it was less than 50 feet in the front, then you would have to build a house sideways, which people tend not to want to do that. But as you can see here, it says lot front dimensions. It says 60, 60, 60. This one says 50, but of course the other ones don't say anything, and it's because the listing agent didn't put it in there. So it's kind of difficult to find out. One thing that I would suggest you do is you can find dimensions either going through Realist to find dimensions. You can use Realist tax and then type in the address, and then it'll give you in the bottom of the report the dimensions, and I already have that laid out here in my demo. So here I found the property 7717 Green Lawn. Of course, no beds and all that. That's kind of not applicable. It kind of tells you the lot square footage and the price and when it was listed. But this is real neat because it also tells you who the owners are and the legal description of the property and their assessment and taxes, their tax rate. It's pretty good information here. But the way at the bottom of the realist report, you're going to see the dimensions. So for example, this property is 40 feet. So my question to you would be, would you send this particular property to your client? Of course not. The reason why is because he said 50 feet. So you don't want to waste his time. So this is a good way of checking, because this is coming from the Harris County appraisal district information, but it tells them exactly what the frontage is, because here's the street name, Green Lawn Drive. So obviously this is the front of the lot. And so if somebody wanted to build a house here, they would probably have to build it kind of long ways. And the customer wants to build it, facing the street, for example. It also gives you a little bit of map. So Realist is really neat. I would advise you to learn using Realist. Again, in order to invoke that, you go to Public Records, then Realist Tax, and then you type in the quick search dialog box, you'll type in the address, the particular address, and then it'll produce this report. Of course, I only grabbed the little section of the dimensions, but really it's this entire report. This is real neat too because it tells you, the tax rate and other information. Like Realist is really neat because it mentions what are the last taxes that they paid, or the market value that they had in the property. Like this particular property is now going up. It's still stagnant at 17,160, but their taxes, haven't really gone up either. They only paid $455 in 2016. In 2017, they paid 463, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's one way of doing it. So let's just say that your client says, "Hey, I really like that property. Submit an offer for me." Well, you're like, "Okay, let me call my mentor," or let me call somebody to. How do I do this? Uh, just the primary things that you really need. Of course, you don't need all that other stuff that we tend to ask you for, but of course, you still need a MUD, because that property might be located in a MUD. That property might be located in a homeowners association as well, with deed restrictions. You still, of course, need the IBS. That's the most critical document that you need every time you're working with the client. But the difference one is the unimproved property contract. So the unimproved property contract, um, it's a little bit slow there, but let me load it up here because I have it already. So this is what the unimproved property contract looks like. It kind of looks similar to the 1-4, so it's not a lot of learning, but a lot of the big differences, of course, that there's no seller's disclosure, things like that. I don't know why my thing stopped here. But let's kind of look at it. Again, you type in the seller's information, the buyer's information, the property lot information, legal description. Also, as new agents, I know there's several new agents on the line. Make sure that the legal description is accurate. Okay, make that a habit. So, for example, you see how this one is very, very, very long. Yes, you do have to type all that in. If you can't do it, you might have to put it under special provisions, but it needs to have that entire legal description. You can't shortchange it. So make sure you have that for sure. um, and then you put in the price. Usually unimproved property it tends to be cash, a lot of cash. There's hardly any that's a loan, and usually lenders don't like to lend money. Anything below 50,000 is what I've been hearing. So if the lots are less than 50,000, there's probably not going to be a loan. It's probably going to be all cash. Or sometimes you might find an owner financing. So that's there. Is similar to what you guys are used to. Of course, you put in the title information, title policy again. Paragraph 6. That's normal. The survey. Now, normally, and here's a tip. Whenever I'm working with buyers, well, keep in mind surveys are not the norm in land, because the name itself says unimproved property, right? So let me see. So the title here says unimproved property contract. Well, guess what? Unimproved means that there's nothing been done to that lot. There's never been a house on it. There probably doesn't have all the plumbing or electrical, so it's just bare bones. The sewer system and water system is probably still on the street. If you're in the city of Houston, it's probably still on the street, and you have to get permits. The buyers have to get permits to have a plumber come, a licensed plumber, to start tapping into the water and sewer, and also you need a licensed electrician, and so on and so forth. But one tip that I always advise my buyers, and it does cost money, but I always recommend my buyers to go ahead and order a survey. And the reason why, a survey during the option period. The reason why I stress that is because they're buying land, but they have no idea where the fence, starts or ends. They don't know where point A, B, C, D, E is, well, A, B, C, D. Um, Maybe there's a neighbor next door and his fence might be kind of encroaching on where the buyer's going to be buying. So it's advisable for a buyer to go ahead and spend money on a survey to ensure that he knows what he's buying because he can visually see it. And I advise them to do it during the option period. So if for some reason they see something wrong with the survey, an example might be, let's just say that they were planning on installing a pool in the backyard, and the survey shows an easement crossing a lot of their land that they're planning on buying, and therefore they're not going to be able to install a pool. They found out before they invested the money to buy the lot. So that's one advice that I give when doing surveys. I mean, when buying land. The contract looks similar. Of course, like I said, there's no seller's disclosure. And, you just kind of, everything else is just similar to what you guys got. The closing date. There's no home warranty because there's no house. It does have the famous paragraph 12A1B, which is where if the buyers want to ask for help for closing costs, or some kind of negotiation that you're trying to do. But yeah, so anyway, so this is just kind of what it looks like. So hopefully that doesn't look so bad. It looks like my presentation disappeared. I'm going to open this up again. So again, buying land, like I said, I recommend having buyers look at the survey during the option period. Okay, so what's the next topics here? So that's how you.
Can I ask a question before
Yeah, go ahead.
move on?
Go ahead. Thank you.
In the title section, I think it's section B on the contract. I noticed that you had an item checked there, and I wanted to ask you how you determine which one of those boxes to check.
Okay, which paragraph is that?
B.
B.
Under 6.
Oh, 6B, you're talking about right here? Oh yeah,
yeah.
the famous, I call it the famous 8II.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So let me explain this. This is this question pertains to all contracts, not just this one, not just for this particular example. So this is really critical because the will be amended to reach shortages in areas is additional title insurance. Okay, now over here you have title policy insurance, which the seller pays. And if you're familiar with the title premium chart, it's kind of close to like 1%. But let's just say that this is like $1,000. We'll just say, just to agree with. So let's just say that the seller's paying $1,000 for title policy insurance, right? So that protects them when they sell the house over to a new buyer. The 8II is additional insurance for shortages, and that might be things like the neighbor next door is encroaching on top of the land that they're buying. That's a shortage. Okay, it doesn't fix it. It doesn't fix this. It's just noting that there's a problem, and you're going to be buying extra insurance. The cost of this insurance is 5% of the total premium. So my example here, I told you that the title policy insurance costs $1,000, right? So this 8II, if you can envision a dollar amount, it would be $50, which is not bad, right? And it's not $50 a month. It's just $50 for the life of that person living in that house or property. So you guys as agents have to explain to your buyers, do you want to buy extra insurance? And here, besides the 8I selecting this box, you also select either buyer or seller. or it could be both too. And then they split the costs. Or you have to select this one, which means will not be amended or deleted, which it will not be a cost. I always recommend to go ahead and select 8II and then select seller. And let's see if the seller pays for it. It's only $50 in this particular example, for example. It doesn't cost that much. So whenever you're looking at 8II, think of 5% of the total premium rate. Okay? Hopefully that answers your question.
But it could be that the seller's paying for the title policy and the buyer is paying for shortages.
There you go. And
okay.
So then you would select this one.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But me, when I submit an offer the first time, my fiduciary duties is to my buyer, right? And I'm going to see if the seller pays for a lot of stuff. All they're going to say is no, right?
So you wouldn't have that conversation with your client first if your client is
right. Okay. I have it first with my buyer, correct?
Okay.
And I tell my buyer, guess what? I'm going to ask the seller to pay for it. Yes. That's what you should do, correct? You should always do that for anything. Yes, correct. So, have you been using this section, or you haven't really been using it?
Well, I had an issue come up over these boxes right here. I mean, it's resolved now, but your explanation helped a lot.
Yeah. This is what I tell my students. Whenever you see this line right here, think of 5%. I always look at things as money. So.
Yeah, that's helpful. I mean, especially knowing that it's such a small dollar amount.
Yeah.
Potentially.
And I usually tell my buyers, look, if the seller's going to say no, it's only $50, and it's not $50 a month. You know, it's just. And if they're gonna build a house and live there for 30 years, what's $50, right? Is the way I see it. It doesn't seem. I know it's money, but still. Anyway, I hope. But
just to make sure I understand you correctly, even before checking either one of those boxes, the shortages or the it won't be amended, you would have that conversation with your client before you checked either one of those.
Yeah, while you're filling it out and sending them to sign, you're already talking to them about, hey, because this is okay. So let me pretend that you're my buyer. Mm-hmm. I want to go, hey, and what's your name, by the way?
Natalia.
Hey, Natalia, I'm going to ask for, $18,000. I mean, I'm going to submit $18,000 cash offer. I'm going to have the title policy paid by the seller. I'm going to ask the seller to pay for shortages in areas. I'm going to see if they have a survey. You see how I'm talking like normal like that?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. So and we're going to close on, March 31st. And, do you want me to ask for seller contribution, which is paragraph 12A1B? It's almost like you're reading out loud this contract to your buyers.
Okay.
Like you're telling a story.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I talk that way. I always talk, when I read these contracts, I always tell it like a story. And I hope that helps.
That does. Thank you.
Yeah, good question, by the way. You keep me on my toes. Alrighty, so now let's go on to the next. We did that. Okay, so again, let me reiterate a tip. Suggest the buyers purchase a survey during the option period. That way they can visually see what they're purchasing during the option period. And another thing, you guys as new agents, please start using OP. That way everybody can tell that you're not a new realtor. And if any issues with the boundaries or encroachments, they can terminate the contract. And I'm sorry I put a little zero here at the end, but I usually put 150 in 15 days. Now, in the option period, you guys probably have heard of 7 days or 10 days, but this is another difference of buying land. Surveys sometimes take 10 days to complete. You probably heard that horror story sometimes. And so that's why I prefer an option period being 15 days. Because I want the ability for the surveyors to go out and have that time, and then we still have to study it, right? Because we want to make sure if we can build a swimming pool, or if we can build a house. Because what if the land doesn't allow too much space for your foundation? You got to think about these things, because keep in mind it's undeveloped land. It's never been developed, so there's a lot of guessing games. Okay. Okay. So any other questions before we move on? All right. What concretes do I use for listing a lot? Kind of similar. You still need the MUD, you still need the HOA, you still need the IABS, but the one that of course, you're probably used to doing is a listing agreement, and it's the same one they use for houses. Okay, there's no difference. And I have an example here. And by the way, I'm showing you actual real contracts that I do personally, so these are legit. So here, this is an investor that I work with. He buys a lot of property, a lot of land, and then we sell it. And we closed on this one last week. But anyway, so here's, it just looks normal. There's nothing different. It's not an HOA. There's no exclusions, of course, because there's no house, and the price and the terms and conditions and all that good stuff, the commissions, and so there's nothing different of listing a lot for sale. Okay, it's the same. I just default to centralized showing, but of course there's nothing to see. Just my template always says that. Now, one thing that you need to be aware of is here it says broker is authorized to place a key box on the property. I know sometimes, or many times, the lots, you can just do a drive-by and just look at the lot, right? But there are times, like I had one that I was selling in Beasley, Texas, and that one actually had a lock, and it had a chain, because it had the gate chained up, and I had to put a lock there so they can open the gate and go, and because it was like 10 acres. So the buyers needed, who wanted to buy that, they needed to go drive their car in. So in that particular case, I had to say broker is authorized. You know, so it's not just because it's a door that of a house. It's also a gate that you might have to open up. That's really about it. I mean, these are just normal stuff. There's nothing different about the exclusive right to sell for a lot. Okay, so let's just see now. Preparing the listing. So this is what I normally do, and there's probably a lot more stuff depending on what the situation is, but you need to know the property details, like who the owner is, if there's any outstanding mortgages, liens, lawsuits, HOA fees owed. I had one of my students who they could not close because the owner, they were selling the property for $18,000, and they had like 2 more days before the closing date, and the title company was having a hard time trying to get the HOA to respond if the owner owed any HOA fees. It turns out that they got it that same day when they were kept on bothering them, and it turned out that the owner owed $7,000 in back HOA fees, and there was also a mechanical lien too, and so it was like almost like $25,000 that the owner owed in HOA fees and also in the mechanical liens. So of course he was upside down, because if he sold the property for 18,000 and he owes 25,000, guess what? He's in the negative. So the contract had to be terminated. And plus he's at default, of course. So that was a bad thing there. Another thing you got to make sure is to ask if they're foreigners. And this is important for any listing, a house or property or land. The question is way at the bottom of the listing. Oh, maybe I should show that. And I want you guys to take it very, very seriously. Please do not forget. This is such an important question. But right here, paragraph 21I, it says if seller is a foreign person, okay, Is the seller a foreign person? Yes or no? Well, sometimes you might forget to checkbox that. And that probably means to me is that you forgot to ask the client if he's a foreigner or not. Usually that means if he's got a social security or not. If he doesn't have a social security number, then the title company is going to withhold with 10 to 15% in taxes from the sale of the proceeds and send it to the IRS. And if you, as a listing agent, didn't mention this to him 30 days ago when you listed the lot for sale, he's going to look at you very angrily because he's going to say, how come you didn't tell me about this? Okay, so please, this is for houses or land. Now, I'm not a CPA, and you're not a CPA either. You're a realtor. So you need to tell them, please contact your CPA about this. That's all you can say. All you can tell them is, hey, I heard that there's a 10 to 15% tax withheld by the title company when you sell the property. That means that they don't have a social security number. Okay? So please keep that in mind. You can also find out more information through the tax roll. Search property in Realist to check dimensions, for example. You can go to the appraisal district and get that information. So just real quick, here's another demo. Whenever you click on within Matrix, Matrix MLS has a hyperlink, which is in blue. And we're going to click on this 77, yeah, this one right here. So let's go ahead and invoke this Matrix MLS. Load it up. And right here it says tax account number. This is a hyperlink and it's in blue. And all these things that are in blue are hyperlinks. You can actually click on it and it brings you up to Realist, or I'm sorry, the property details report. And then when you click on the property details report, it also has another hyperlink, which, why is it slowing down here? And you can click on that hyperlink. Let's see if I have a, yeah, here, right here. So while it's loading, then you can then click the parcel ID number within the Realist. And what it does is it gives you this HCAD. Okay, or whatever county you're in. It kind of looks similar. It's the appraisal district website. Now, here it gives you more information too about the this particular owner. But one thing that I use since I sell a lot of land, I use this map facet, and I click on this hyperlink as well. And then it goes into another screen where it gives you the different plats for that particular property. And I usually go to the map page. And let's just say that this particular property that we're looking at, which is the 7717 Green Lawn, here is another way of finding the location of where this property is located, and also the dimensions. And it's real helpful because, like, there's times when I'm selling land, I have no clue where it's at because sometimes they don't even have addresses. You'll find something that says 0 Homer Street. Well, that's not an address. And the reason why they have the word Homer is 0 is because they haven't defined it yet. So here's the plat of Appraisal District, Harris County Appraisal District. And for example, I'm looking for 7717 Greenland. Well, I know here's Greenland Drive, but you notice that I don't see 7717. So how do I find it? I don't know where it's at. Well, I look at the property detail and I see that the parcel ID is 0005. So if I go here, I go, oh, 0005, here it is. but is that really it? I can't tell. So what I normally do is I look at the other addresses, and so you see how it says 7701? Well, and then I see 7705. Well, usually addresses are in increments of 4. So when you do 7701 plus 4, it becomes 7705. When you do 7705 plus 4, it becomes 7709. So obviously, if you keep on adding 4s, the next one will be 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, right? And then 13 plus 4 is 17, which is right here. So now I know for sure that this is the property that we're going to be selling, and I'm going to put the for sale sign. When I drive here to put the for sale sign the next day, I'm going to know that it's right here. Okay. Now, of course, there might not be no fences, and you kind of have to do a judgment call. Now, like me and my investor, we actually have those wheels that it's like a wheel, and it's got a tape measure inside of it, and we'll pick like a fence, and we'll count 40 feet, and then we'll count 40 feet again, and then we know that that's his property. And we carry like an orange spray can and kind of do it on the grass to know that that's kind of like his property. Because you're going to find lots that don't have fences at all. And then you're going to have to kind of judge where that for sale sign should be located. And plus, you got to take pictures too. Now, HAR allows you to take a minimum of 3 pictures. So you don't have to take 6 or 12 or whatever. You can just take 3 pictures, and they're good with that. Okay. Anybody have any questions? I know that's a little bit kind of, sometimes it gets a little bit too complicated.
I have another question.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Back on the listing agreement.
Yes.
I saw that you had 2% as the commission, and I was just curious as to, is that something that you normally do on just on land?
No, I don't want you to follow what I have. I work with 5 investors, and so I'm very, very busy, and so I sell quantity, and that's why I have to do this.
You give them a break.
Yeah, because like one investor told me one time, Fernando, if you don't charge me less, I'm gonna find somebody else.
Okay.
So my thing is, the ultimate goal that I do is I go, okay, like this particular lot, I actually got 2 leads out of it, and I got my 3%.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I felt like the other 2 leads that I got compensated for the loss that I have on this one.
Well, to me, that definitely makes sense when you have a repeat buyer like an investor.
Correct. Yeah, like one investor I've had for 7 years, and another one for 5. And my gravy train is really, really healthy with my investors.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you don't have to follow what I'm doing. I'm just saying this is what I do. Yeah, but in the past I've learned they'll find somebody else that will do it.
Yeah, well, I work with investors too, and actually I'm an investor myself.
Oh, so well, you're speaking my language.
It's nice to see that you do that.
Yeah. I work. Yeah, so I can tell you're an investor by just the sense of it. But yeah, you guys, you got a game plan. I have a game plan. If you can constantly give me business, that's fine. And I'll make money off of some other, because I get a lot of leads, because to me, the for sale sign in front of land or houses is like advertising, right? Mm-hmm. So I even had one case where I was installing a for sale sign on one of the lots, and some young kid approached me. He goes, "Hey, I've seen you before. I've seen your sign before." Because one time I had like 16 listings. Wow. And it was all land. And he goes, "I've seen your sign before." It was kind of cute. I've never heard that before, but thank you.
So Fernando, this only costs the buyer 3% instead of the usual 6%?
Oh, so on this one, so in my example here, And keep in mind, guys, that when you're in the mentor program, it's probably not going to work. Okay, so full disclosure, this is after your mentor program. Let's make sure of that. But like in this case right here, I have 2% for my buyer agent and 1% for me, or $250 for me only. So this is what they call variable. I don't know if you're seeing that in the MLS listing. They'll say variable yes. That's what this means. But please do not follow this. This is very discounted. Don't look at it. But this is just an example.
Okay.
Did that answer your question though?
Yes. So usually what it would cost either the buyer or the seller would be 6%. In this case, it's 3% or possibly even less.
Correct.
Correct.
And this, yes, and no, we're talking about this. It will cost the seller, not the buyer.
Okay.
Yeah. Make sure you have the right wordage. It's the seller who's paying the commission, not the buyer.
Okay.
Yeah, the buyer doesn't pay commission. No.
Okay.
Yeah. But good question.
I got it.
Yeah. I'm sorry for correcting you. I just want to make sure you're using the right words. Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah. All right, good. So let's see, what else do we got? So adding a lot listing, you go to click add edit and then click on lots add edit. And then you locate the property, the street number, street name. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. See if I can show you a property. So we click on add edit. That's a little slow. While we're waiting, if there's any other questions while my system is trying to catch up. Okay, so let's do add edit.
So Fernando, are your investors building on these on the lots that they're buying?
No, one of my investors is he flips properties, and he buys them at tax sales. So we go to auctions. That's a whole different class.
Yeah.
That requires like a 3-hour session. But yes, okay. It's at the tax sale, yes. And then we have to wait 6 months for the redemption period to expire. And then we can put it for sale.
Okay.
Would you guys be interested in an investment kind of class?
Yes, I would.
Okay.
I would too.
Okay. Because I'm always thinking about what would be the next topic.
Me too.
No, just 2 people. I'm just kidding.
And me too.
Okay, I already got a consensus. Blah, you know what I'm saying. It seems like my next topic will be on investments, and I can talk about foreclosures and HUD homes and tax sales and all that stuff. Let me see. I'm trying to find this property. 4822 Fall. Because this one I recently sold. Yeah, it's pretty fun working with that auction stuff, but it's a headache though. Man, I can't get it to work. Anyway, so but that's something there. Okay, some helpful tips. Need to know the property details, who the owner is, if any outstanding mortgages, liens, lawsuits. Again, the foreigner thing. Search the tax roll, realist, and appraisal district. Those are 3 places you can go to help you with determining, like for example, if somebody says, I wanted the dimension to be more than 50 feet in the frontage side, or hey, I want you to list my lot for sale. I would strongly suggest to use these 3 mechanisms to populate the lot. because whenever I'm selling listings that are lots, the common questions are, of course, they always ask for owner financing. Um, you know, Another one is what's the dimensions? They always ask about that. And now they're starting to ask me if it floods or not. And I had never, ever, ever had that question asked before in the past. I've been a realtor for 12 years and I don't remember that question being asked, but now they're starting to ask that question for lots, which is a good question.
Is there any,
Huh?
excuse me, Fernando, is there anywhere to go to find current flood zone information?
Yes.
I guess
Yeah, you can go to
FEMA.
Okay, so here's two ways to do it. You go to FEMA.gov, got updated in September of last year. They actually updated it after Hurricane Harvey. They did some studies. I think they updated it in March 2018, like half of it, and then they finished updating everything in September of 2018. So FEMA.gov has the new floodplains. But one thing that I suggest you do, or not you personally, is the buyer should contact their insurance company that they use personally, and the insurance company will immediately tell them if it requires flood insurance or not by you giving them the address of the house or property. That's the best way because they're the ones that are going to tell you if you can buy it or not. While you have a contract and you want to buy insurance, they're going to tell you yes or no. So that's what my buyers do. They call the insurance company. But FEMA.gov is updated since September 2018. Did that answer your question? Hello? I think
Well, so our program hasn't been updated. Is that what you're saying? But you have to go to FEMA.gov to get accurate information.
Right. FEMA.gov is where the source is at, correct?
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
That's where I would tell everybody to go. FEMA.gov, government. Okay. Another thing that buyers will bring to you as far as land, ask them what are they going to do with it. Of course, most of them will tell you that they want to build a house, and one thing is that my question with them is always, well, who's your builder? Who are you going to use to build the house? And the builders have to do a soil testing. They have to check the ground to see, what kind of clay does it have? Can the house foundation be stable in this particular land? All these other things that we have no clue of. And I would always want the buyer to have the builder involved and in the initial stages, and possibly even go to, let's just say that they like 5 lots and they really like only these 3, then I would use the builder to go to those 3, and maybe they can do a testing or see how long the testing is, and probably do it during the option period. That way, because my main thing is I don't want somebody buying land with their dreams of building a beautiful house, and then all of a sudden they find out that they can't put a swimming pool, or their house that they want of 3,000 square feet, the builder says, oh man, sorry, you can only do 2,000 square feet. And then they're going to look at you going, how come you didn't help me and understand all this? Of course, you're not a general contractor or a builder. You have no idea. And you always tell them you're a realtor. But you can advise them and say, hey, during the option period, make sure you do every single test possible. Soil testing, surveys, whatever the builder needs. That's something that you can help. And if you need 20 days of option period, do 20 days of option period. You don't want them to buy something and then they can't do what they thought they could do and build. Because remember, we can't see what's underneath the ground. Yeah, it's easy to sell a house because you see it. But land, you don't see it. You don't know what's underneath. So that's just my 2 cents. Okay. Anything else before we wrap it up? I know it's getting late. I know everybody has to go to night night. But anything else that you guys have questions on regarding land? I hope this was helpful. Just remember to remove your phones. To unmute your phone, your computer, if you got a question. I think somebody's talking. I can't hear them very well though.
Fernando, I mean, so
yes.
you would not rely on the flood information in the matrix.
No. Yeah. I mean, it's okay to use that and the FEMA.gov at the same time. I would use both of them.
Okay.
Don't rely on just Matrix, because Matrix is not a government program, right? FEMA is the program, because you're used to. Have you done like listing agreements? I mean, done listings on MLS?
No.
Okay, so listings on MLS, there's always a question of where did you get the source from the building square feet, and the choices are appraisal district, or it's builder, or it's you always have to disclose where did you get that information from. And if somebody asks you, hey, I noticed that you told me about the floodplains on XYZ for this house. Where did you get the information from? And you're going to say, oh, from Matrix. Well, they're going to say, well, I got this from FEMA, and it's not the right thing that you sent me. That's why I prefer you doing both. Do FEMA and Matrix. Okay. But I would rely more on FEMA because they're the government. I'm glad I have that recorded, by the way. I'm just doing a joke. So the source is important, where the data comes from. Mm-hmm. All right. That's good questions. I really appreciate all you guys' questions, and now I'll work on something for investors and all that, foreclosures and all that kind of. I'm presuming you guys want to hear about foreclosures and things like that too.
Yes, and how
tax sales and REOs and all that kind of stuff.
And how you get somebody out of a home if you buy a foreclosure.
Oh, you're talking about evictions?
Yes.
Oh boy, I'm not going to be able to tell you. That's more of a legal thing. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know how to do that. Anyway, but I kind of hear what you're saying. Well, thank you guys for your time. I really appreciate it, and I hope y'all learned a little something about lots.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Fernando. It was awesome. Learned a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, Dorian.
Thank you, Fernando.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Good night. Good night.